So, how I became me, number 3, jail time. These videos have become an outlet for me. I'm dealing with a lot of shit in life right now. I think we all are. And it's been eye-opening to make these videos, post them, and share them with people I know and don't know. And it's really got me thinking about a lot of the things that I've been dealing with and where my decision-making skills came from. I'm not perfect. My life is far from perfect. There's so many things I want to improve on, and I'm working on it. But these videos have helped me process things that I'm struggling with. My brother, role models like my principal in my second episode. And jail time, I think, is important because it's where I learned the limitations on who I was and what kind of extremes I was going to go to. So, at 16 years old, I told you I was not a good student in school. And by the time I was 16, I had started skipping school, not going. We're going to talk about my mom in another video dedicated just to her. But as far as this episode goes, it starts with her. I was an asshole kid, always. And I've never raised my hand to a woman in anger. I never will. I don't care if they hit me. I don't care if they stab me. I'll never do it. I grew up knowing that was wrong. I was taught from a very early age, you don't do it. And I've lived by that, and I've instilled it in all my sons as well. But on this particular day that set this chain of events into action, I decided I wasn't going to go to school. The night before, I had stayed up really late. I had walked down to a 24-hour Cumbies. I had gotten one of those huge fountain drinks of Mountain Dew, and I had walked back to my house. And I probably didn't even drink a quarter of it. It was just something to do in the middle of the night. And I put it on the shelf next to my bed. The next morning, my mother came down to wake me up to get me out to school. And obviously I wasn't going. It was nothing she could do to get me up. I had just fallen asleep. And my mom, being the mom that she was, wasn't taking no for an answer, and she dumped that fucking soda over my head. And as I snapped out of the sleep that I was in, I went to go slap the soda out of her hand, and I hit my mom. Never in a million years would I ever raise a hand to my mother. Never would I hurt her, but I did. And I connected with the side of her face, and it wasn't a punch, but it was like a slap. And I broke her glasses. She had a little cut in her eyebrow. To this day, it still beats me up that ever happened. It's like my biggest regret when it comes to my mom. She believed that I meant to hit her, that I actually hit her. She knows now. I'm grateful that she's given me the opportunity to clarify and talk to her about it. I mean, it's been 3 decades, so we've definitely had talks about it. But I hit her, and she lost her shit. I got my ass beat, and I got thrown out. The reason this is important to the story is because had this morning not taken place, I never would have wound up in the situation I wound up in. And it was where I landed that put me in a position to go to jail at such a young age. So I always found myself hanging around with the troublemakers, the punks, the hoodlums. It's just where I fit in. And 9 times out of 10, they were 5, 6 years older than me. I was always a big kid, so I blended in with 20-year-olds and 25-year-olds. It wasn't unheard of for me to show up at a party where I was a kid and people treated me like I was one of them. But I wound up staying with these 2 brothers, and they were both in their 20s. I was 16, and they were into some shit. And I mean, it started off all fun and games, camping, off-roading, fucking running around in the middle of the night doing dumb shit. And they had this whole life outside of what even I knew about. And they took me in. They gave me a place to stay. I crashed on their couch. And it was like the dawning of the internet. And one of the brothers had started talking to some girl down in like Alabama or some shit, and he hopped a flight down there. He was gone for a week. And it was during that week that one of the brothers I had woken up, and I woke up to a dude dressed up like a full-blown ninja in front of me. And at first I was a little freaked out, but then I realized who it was, and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? And it was that night that I found out. And as he told me what he was doing B&Es in all these little stores. They were stealing soda and chips and just dumb shit. They weren't breaking into houses. They weren't robbing people. And they had this really great sales pitch about how insurance covers everything you take. It's a store. They have insurance for that. Me being a dumb, young, naive kid, that sounded fucking right. It sounded great. Like, we could take stuff and then they're just going to get free money back? Wow, okay, I'm in. We went out that same night, me and that one brother, and we wound up stealing some cigarettes and a couple cases of soda. It wasn't anything crazy. But like everything else in my life, I take it to extremes. If I enjoy something, if I get excited about something, I got to know everything there is to know about it. I want to know every fucking detail to the point where it's almost an obsession. This movie, Hudson Hawk, how many of you have seen it, but that was like our big influence. We started using skateboards to roll around in stores. Like, it's comical to look back on it now, the dumb shit that we did, but I escalated it. We started hitting money boxes and registers and taking cash and things that were worth money. Again, never from a home. We never crossed that line, and we had what we thought was morals. So stupid. But we got carried away, and we were doing 2, 3 a night, and the cops were up our ass. There were so many nights where we ran from them and the dogs. There were nights we went out dressed up just to throw rocks at cop cars and get them to chase us so we could outrun them. And we did. We never got caught until we did. We had some amazing moments during that time. And I'm not talking about the criminality of it all, the stupid stuff that we did, but there was some other stuff we did that like you just wouldn't do unless you were living that kind of lifestyle. In the center of the town I grew up in, there was always factories back in the 1800s, early 1900s, shoe factories, broom factories, shit like that. And there's this one building that still has a massive chimney, probably, I'd say 90 to 100 feet tall. Big enough for you to like climb up inside of it. And one night we decided, there was a hole punched in the side of it big enough to like climb in, like not crawl, but you could like step up on it and walk inside of it. And one night we decided we were gonna go to the top of this thing from the inside. The brothers went in and I followed right behind them, and the three of us shimmied up that thing. And I'll tell you, by the time we got to the top, we were regretting our decision. So much soot and dirt, like dust and spider webs, and I mean, we were covered in black, even through the mask that we wear, and even through all the clothes we're wearing. It was everywhere. But we made it to the top. And I remember the night that we got up there, and we were sitting up there, and we were all sitting on the edge of this chimney, not realizing how stupid we were on the way up. That was the first night I felt guilt. I was looking down at this town, and I'm looking around, and I can see all these stores that I grew up going to buying penny candy, and like I knew the owners, they knew my name. I had a paper route with some of these people. And I'm looking down at these stores, and I just had this overwhelming feeling of guilt. Like, this was my town, this was my home. And what was I doing? And I didn't talk about it, I didn't verbalize it, but I felt it. And I remember sitting up there, and the cops were parked in the supermarket parking lot across the street. And there was just like a weird irony to it all. So we climbed back down, and we all went back to the house, cleaned up, showered up, and I really kind of just disregarded that guilt that I felt in that moment. Once I was down and I was back on the street and we were laughing about being unable to breathe, I just kind of moved past it. Young, dumb, and didn't really... I wanted to hold on to it when I was up there, but once I hit the ground, I just let it go. So, a couple nights later, I bumped into somebody that was interested in buying more valuable merchandise, a fence. And he was offering us pretty good money for certain shit. And he had lists. And he would just give me a list, and if we could fill anything on the list, that's what we would go after. This went on for probably a solid 6 months. Winter, summer, into the following summer. We, I mean, if I was proud of it, I would say we had a good run, but we got lucky. We really did. We got lucky. We should have been caught a dozen times, if not more. So, we got greedy. We brought in a bunch of other people. And I'm not going to say names. I don't really talk to any of them anymore. One of the brothers has passed away. And the other one lives in Ireland. He's lived there for many years. He left probably a year or two after we got out. And all the other guys that we brought in, those are the ones that closed up shop for us. I don't know. They took it upon themselves to venture out on their own. When they got caught, they let everybody know who we were. Something we didn't really factor in the equation. Again, young, dumb, and greedy. So statements got filled out. Raids happened. And I had a police officer reach out to me. Small town. We all knew everybody. Cops, people, neighbors. Mayberry RFD. But he called my house. And my older brother and I, from my first video, we sound exactly alike on the phone. My own mother couldn't tell us apart. So I answered the phone, and he just assumed that I was my older brother. It happened all the time. His best friends would call and start talking to me like I was him. And he asked if I was around. I was like, no, he's not here. And can I get a message to him? What's going on? Did he do something? Is he in trouble? Is he okay? And he tells me he just needs to talk to me. He says he doesn't want to have to go looking for me. Everybody else had already been caught. And I played it off, hung up the phone. I waited a few minutes, and I thought about everything that was going on, and I kind of accepted my fate. And I had only been at my mother's house that time that he called because I heard about everybody getting picked up. I heard about the raids. I heard about everything that was going on. So I went to my mom's to kind of tuck tail. So I sat there and I was thinking about it. Nobody was home. It was just me. And I went down to my old bedroom and I kind of sat there for a little while and I just contemplated what my options were. And I knew I really didn't have any. Like, where was I going to go? So I walked It's probably 2.5 miles from my house to the police station. And I walked down there, and I walked up to the door, and I went into the breezeway, the foyer, and there's a window where the dispatch officer is, and I remember she looked up at me and said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "I'm Jason Mahefker, and Officer so-and-so would like to speak to me." So I went in, and he slid some blacked out statements across the table to me. Just names blocked out, personal information. And I started reading them. And I knew, I already knew we were caught. I just didn't know how bad it was until I started reading those papers. I'm just a kid. I was still 16 when this was going on. I hadn't even turned 17 yet. I didn't have anybody with me, no lawyer, no parent. I hadn't even been read my rights yet. They were just putting the cards on the table in front of me. And I looked up the police officer right in the eye, and I was like, "So what do you want to do? What do we do here? What's the next move?" Because I had no clue. And he says, "We're not even going to arrest you. You're free to go." He says, "You're going to get a summons in the mail." I don't know why it happened that way. I don't know why they didn't arrest me or do a bail or anything. Just let me walk out. And I remember as I was leaving there, I was like, wow, that was easy. This is so stupid. And then the paperwork came in the mail, and I went to my first court date, and they gave me a public defender. The guy never even knew my name, didn't know who I was, didn't know anything about me. He never even asked me how old I was. Nothing. I mean, rightfully so. I mean, I was a punk. I didn't really deserve to be treated with... everybody talks about human rights and, civil rights and everything. Wait, if you're pulling the kind of shit that I pulled, screw you. You don't deserve any of it. You really don't. You're an asshole. People are out there working to make a living, and you're taking it from them. Even if they have insurance, even if they're getting it back, you're making their lives harder. You're hitting them where it hurts. I didn't see it then, but after my 2 years in, I understood it. Because I felt like what they were taking away from me didn't even make up for what I did. So I go to my second court case, again alone, no parents, a lawyer who doesn't even know my name, doesn't know anything about what's going on except for what's on the paper in front of him from the police department and the DA. And he hands me a green sheet, and it's German to me. I have no idea what he's talking about. I see years, I see months, I see suspended, I see all these different things. I don't know what any of it is. Nobody's there to help me or explain it to me. And I just signed it. I was like, okay, whatever. My co-defendants, the two brothers, so the three of us were put on together. All the other guys, their court case was one day. They were in and out. But me and the two brothers wound up getting all the same thing. It was 2 years with 4 months to serve. And, I mean, that's lucky compared to the things we did, you know? So the two brothers did, I think it was 30 days, 35 days. I did the same. And we all got out in this program called COPE. It's GPS monitoring, go to classes, you can't do drugs, you can't drink, you can't leave your house. You can't even get a job. So it's like the strictest house arrest. And we were supposed to be on it for the remainder of that 4 months, and then that would have finished our sentence, basically freeing up space in the jail. And I remember I was out for a couple weeks, and I had cabin fever, to say the least, being stuck in the house. And one night my younger brother and I, we kind of went at it. I mean, it's just the way it was in the house. If you had a dispute with one of your brothers, I mean, we brawled. It was just the way it was. We went at it, and I wound up leaving the house. Stupid. So I walked about a half a mile up the street to a Dairy Queen, and on the walk there, I realized how fucked up how bad I fucked up. Like, I knew instantly, as soon as it hit me, I knew I was screwed. I didn't realize it when I left. It wasn't until I was halfway there that I figured it out. So I get to the payphone, and I immediately call the number that's on the bracelet. And I say, hey, this is where I am. This is what's happened. What do I do from here? How do I fix this? And like, don't worry about it. We'll have someone come pick you up. And pick me up, they did. Within a half hour, I was back at the county jail. And I no longer had a 4-month sentence with the remainder suspended. I now had a full 2-year sentence in front of me. 17 and locked up. I never had any traumatic experiences. I went in there thinking all the shit you see in the movies, all the stories you tell, don't drop the soap, all that shit. It happens, but not like they say in the movies, and it never happened to me. I was pretty blessed. I had some old heads in there that they kind of guys that were doing a life sentence on an installment plan. 2 years here, 5 years there. And for some reason, they took me under their wing. They looked out for me. They showed me how things worked. They made sure I didn't get myself in trouble. I didn't go places I didn't belong. I didn't do shit I shouldn't have been doing. And they looked out for me. They got me in the gym. They got me working. And they got me in a place where I could pass my time without going insane. I got lucky, because that doesn't happen to everybody that gets locked up, county or state. It doesn't matter. I mean, you run into somebody that wants to take advantage of you before you run into somebody that's genuinely looking out for you, and you're screwed. I got lucky again. So I do my 2 years, and a couple fights, nothing crazy. I got put in seg for a little while. I see guys making these videos, and they're all hyped up and talking about, I was locked up for 7 years and this is what happened. Like, I don't get it. It's like you're glorifying it. And I get it. People are interested in shit they don't experience, they don't know. But that's not me. I'm not proud of this shit, but it did define who I am. So when you're locked up, the COs, the inmates, they all tell you, you're coming back, you're coming back, you're coming back, you'll be back. We'll see you in a couple months. It's just the way the mentality is, and for the most part, unfortunately, that's exactly what happens. I mean, in the 2 years I was there, I saw guys get out and 3 months later come back with a 5-year bid. It's sad, really. But I think, fortunately for me, I was young enough and aware of my environment enough to know it wasn't a place I wanted to be again. And I knew that when I got out, I was still going to make some mistakes that we all do. I mean, shit, you can drive down the wrong road and end up arrested. It's America. But I was going to do my best to make sure that I never walked through those doors again. At least not as an inmate. And I've never gone back. I've never put myself in a position where I could go back. You know, there's some dumb shit I did as a kid that I never got caught for. I think we all have that. Nothing crazy or outlandish. Nothing that haunts me or makes me feel guilty. But I walked that line and I didn't want to cross it. Never got into drugs. Never drank heavy. I was aware enough to understand why a lot of these guys were going through what they were going through and why they kept going back. And I'm sorry for a lot of them, because they got dealt shitty hands and they didn't have the common sense to fucking just stop doing the dumb shit. So I do my 2 years. I do my programs, the AA, the NA, the GED class. I get my GED. Really high score. It was awesome. And Sheriff Flynn personally went around and passed out GEDs when you got your diploma. And I remember him, like, he would walk by cells and he'd be like, "Hey, here's your diploma, congratulations." And he stopped at my cell and he was like, "Hey, here's your diploma, congratulations." He goes, "Jay, you got a really good score. Like, you did really well. It's kind of shocking how well you did." And that was pretty much the end of the conversation, but I don't know, it was nice to be acknowledged and being in there. But I did all the shit that I had to do in there to get through it. Worked in the kitchen. I wanted to wash dishes. I didn't want to cook. I didn't want to be around everybody else. When you do dishes, you're alone. There was nobody else in that part of the kitchen. Music's on. It's like having a job. 9 hours a day. You're not even in jail. You're at work. It helped. So I accumulated a tiny bit of good time, because when you get in a fight, when you get a D board, you lose your good time. And unfortunately, those things happen. You don't have a choice. But I wound up getting a little bit. So I got a little bit earlier than I was supposed to. Not much. And I remember I called my uncle. And I knew he'd pick me up. And I knew he wouldn't tell anybody else that I was getting out, because I wanted to surprise some people. When I was locked up, my grandmother wrote me one letter. And it broke my heart. Telling me how disappointed she was in me. How proud of me she was for repaying my debt. And how much she wanted me to learn from it. And become aware and never let something like this happen again. 2 Christmases, 2 Thanksgivings, countless birthdays, not just mine, everybody's. Our family it's a big family, and we always get together, and when one person's missing, it was noticeable, even with that big of a family. So my uncle picks me up, and the first thing he says to me is, "What do you want to eat?" I went to McDonald's. I got a 20-piece chicken nugget, a Big Mac meal, chocolate shake. I mowed. So I'm sitting there eating my food, and he's driving. I had no idea where we were going. And he pulls up to this lake that he goes fishing at. And he's like, "Kev's already down at the water." And we went down to Wachusett Reservoir. We fished for like 2 hours. We didn't catch anything, but I was out. I was standing on the side of a lake with a fishing pole in my hand. My uncle and his best friend sitting next to me. I was breathing. 2 years isn't a lot of time in the grand scheme of things, but when you're a kid, 2 years feels like forever. Especially when every day is the same. So he knew I wanted to surprise my Nana. I wanted to go to her house, and I wanted her to be the first one I saw. So we went there, and he went in the front door, and I went in the back door, and she was in the kitchen where you came in the back door. She had her back to the door, and she must have just assumed I was my uncle. And I walked up behind her. I put my arms around her. I gave her the biggest hug. She didn't realize what was going on until a couple seconds into it, when she looked up and realized it was me. Never in my life did I see my Nana cry. And that day she cried. And they were the happiest tears I've ever seen. I wound up hanging out with her for a little while. Spending some time with her, talking to her, being lectured. And then I wanted to go see my mother and my siblings, my brothers, my sisters, my friends. None of them knew I was out. So we drive the 15 minutes to my house from my grandmother's house. We pull up, and I get out, and we walk in, and there's nobody home. The house is empty. It's weird to have that house be empty. We had an open door policy. Anybody could come and go. Friends, shit, people that we didn't even like would show up there and sleep there, or take a shower, or get something to eat. My mom took care of everybody. She most amazing person on the fucking planet when it came to caring about people. Everybody in my town called my mom Ma. They still do. Nobody's there. And I went downstairs to the basement to my bedroom, and the shit was untouched. It was exactly how I left it that night that I walked out. Nobody went in my room. Nobody fucked with my shit. Nothing was moved. 2 years. I wound up getting in my bed and taking a nap. I didn't want to fall asleep, but once I lay down in my bed, that nap was the best sleep I had in years. Like the safest sleep. I woke up from my nap and still nobody home. So when you get out of jail, they give you back the same clothes you go to court in. Obviously, you don't, unless you have like sweatpants or something, but I didn't. I just threw on my court clothes. So I wake up from my nap and I'm wearing my button down and my nice pants. And I'm putting my clothes on. And I get dressed the way I normally get dressed. It's 95, so you can imagine. Little Nirvana, little Pearl Jam, Soundgarden. So I get dressed and I walk down to the center of town. My mom works at the supermarket, the same supermarket the police officer was sitting in that night. And I walk in and I walked right up to the counter and she just died. She came around the counter, gave me the biggest hug I've ever had. She wanted to leave work right then and there. And I was like, no, just stay. I'll see you when you get home tonight. I'll be there. I didn't bump into my brothers or my sister until later. They were all out living and doing their thing. I know they wouldn't have been if they had known I was coming, but just the way it was. So I started walking around a little bit, checking in on some old friends, seeing how things were going. And I was home. I was done. I didn't have to go back. I didn't have probation or parole. I didn't have anything. Except for one hard lesson learned. That was not a place I ever wanted to be again. It was easy to make better decisions in life after you get every ability to make a decision taken away from you. To you guys out there that keep going back, that keep fucking up, you got to find something better to grab onto than not caring. (17 to 19), 2 of the best years of anybody's life. And I spent it in jail. I wouldn't take it back if I could because it helped make me who I am. It defined me. I learned my limits. Shit my mother couldn't teach me, my father didn't teach me. Guys like Mr. Jolly and it worked for me. And unfortunately, it doesn't work for everybody, but it worked for me. How I became me, number 3, jail time. 2 of the worst years of my life, but the best lesson I ever learned. See you in the next one.